Welcome back. Welcome to this new section on EC2 fundamentals. In this section, we will focus on creating virtual servers in AWS called as EC2 instances. Let's get started. What is EC2? EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. What does EC2 allow you to do? In corporate data centers, in enterprises, applications are typically deployed to physical servers. So you have a physical server and you deploy the application down to the physical server. Now, where do you deploy applications to? In the cloud. In the cloud, what we would do is we would use something called virtual servers. We will rent or we will provision virtual servers and we will deploy applications to these virtual servers. In AWS, these virtual servers are called EC2 instances, Elastic Compute Cloud instances. And the service which we use to provision the EC2 instances is called EC2 service or just EC2. So whenever somebody refers to EC2, they refer to the service which is used to create the virtual servers in AWS. The virtual servers in AWS are called EC2 instances. These EC2 instances are billed by the second. So you can rent virtual servers in AWS and get billed for using them by the second. Now, what are the important features of the EC2 service? The important features of EC2 service are to be able to manage the lifecycle of EC2 instances. So you can create them, start, stop, terminate them, and perform a wide variety of actions with them. The next important thing that you can do with EC2 instances is to load balance between them. So if you have a number of EC2 instances running, you can create a load balancer and you can do load balancing between them. You can also do something called auto scaling. The load on applications will change with time. So you can configure things so that the number of instances increase dynamically with the load on the application. You can also attach storage to your EC2 instances. Your EC2 instances need something like a hard disk so that you can actually install the operating system down there and boot up from there. So the EC2 service helps you to attach storage to your EC2 instances. The other thing it allows you to do is to have network connectivity for your EC2 instance. You should be able to access the EC2 instance from inside the network or from the internet. So you would probably want something like a public IP address, a private IP address. All that kind of network connectivity EC2 service would allow for EC2 instances. In summary, EC2 service helps you to create EC2 instances, attach storage, distribute load to them, auto scale them, and manage the network connectivity for EC2 instances. Now, I'm sure you're getting bored with all this stuff. You want to see everything hands-on. Our goal in this section is to actually create a number of EC2 instances as HTTP server or web servers, and we would want to distribute load to them using load balancer. Are you excited to get this up and running? I'll see you in the next step with the demo. Welcome back. Welcome to this hands-on step on EC2. We would want to create a few EC2 instances and play with them. We would want to check out the life cycle of EC2 instances, how to create them, how to start, stop, terminate them. We also want to do something called EC2 Instance Connect to do an SSH into the EC2 instances. We would want to be able to run some commands on the EC2 instances. Let's get started with it right away. I'm already logged into my AWS Management Console. I am already using my IAM user to log in, and I am in the Mumbai region. As we discussed earlier, we can easily switch regions by clicking in here and changing to a different region. I'm using Mumbai because Mumbai is very near to me. I'm recording the video from Hyderabad and Mumbai is near to me, so I'm choosing Mumbai. You can choose any other region as well. For this EC2 demo, the region which you are selecting does not really matter. You should see almost very similar things whichever region you choose. I am in the Mumbai region and I would want to create a EC2 instance. Do you want to guess how to do that? Just go to services and type in EC2. Go to services, type in EC2 and pick up virtual servers in the cloud. Right now, you can see that I have 0 running instances. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and click it. And over here, I would be able to launch my EC2 instance. Let's click launch instance. And the first thing that you need to select is something called a AMI, Amazon Machine Image. To be able to create an EC2 instance, you would need to tell what operating system you would need. What software do you want to install on your virtual server? So an AMI is a pre-baked image. So an AMI is an image which is already created, which contains predefined operating system, application servers, and applications. There are a number of AMIs which are made available by AWS. You can either use them or you will learn how to create your own AMIs a little later in the course, or you can choose AMIs from either the AWS marketplace or you can use AMIs which are created by the AWS community. Let's keep things very simple for now. Let's choose the Amazon Linux 2 AMI which is present in here. Over here you can see that this is free tier eligible. So if you are in the free tier, you can use this image without paying for it. Let's go ahead and select this. Make sure that you're using Linux 2 and say select. On the next screen, you get to choose something called an instance type. When you create a EC2 instance, you need to decide how powerful the instance should be. How much CPU you want, how much memory you want, how much storage you want, what is the kind of network performance you would want. Depending on the kind of application you are planning to use the EC2 instance for, the instance type changes. So if you go to the instance type drop down, you can see that there are general purpose instances, compute optimized instances, GPU optimized instances, memory optimized, and storage optimized instances. Now, what is the difference between these instances? The thing is, each of these instance types is optimized for specific workloads. The general purpose instances, for example, I'm choosing general purpose right now. You can see that there are a number of instance types which comes up. You can see that T2 is one of the general purpose instance types. You can see that this specific thing has one virtual CPU, about half gig of memory, and it has low to moderate network performance. Now, if I would actually choose a compute optimized instance, you'd see that the compute optimized instance would have a lot more CPU in comparison with memory or storage. So as a ratio, the compute optimized instances have more CPU than memory or storage or network capacity. So when you would want CPU intensive workloads, high performance computing workloads, you would want to use a compute optimized instance. The other type which is present is GPU instances. These GPU instances are great to use for graphic processing workloads. So you can use this for 3D graphics and media processing applications. The next option is memory optimized applications, which have a lot of memory compared to CPU, storage, or network performance. These are optimized for running things like memory caches, so for memcache, distributed caches, and things like that. The last option you have in here is storage optimized applications. Storage optimized instances have a lot of storage attached with them compared to CPU or memory. These are awesome for running data warehouses, or you would want to run a IO intensive application. Now, let's not really worry about all these types. I would go back to general purpose instance types and I would choose T2 micro. You can see that T2 micro is free tier eligible. So let's use this and let's go and configure the instance details. There are a lot of things that you can configure in here. For now, let's not really worry about them. What I would do is I would actually go ahead and say next. On the next screen, you can actually attach a root disk with your EC2 instance. The default size of 8 GB is perfect, and we would use a general purpose hard disk. So these look good, and let's go ahead and say next. On the next screen, you can add tags to your EC2 instance. Tags are very underrated, but one of the most important features in AWS. Over here, you can add a tag indicating, for example, name, right? So I can say name, and I can say first EC2 instance. And let's say I'm going to use this as a dev environment. I can add environment and add this as dev. You can use the tags to represent which business unit this application belongs to. So let's say business unit A. So you can see that tags can be used to indicate environments. It can be used to indicate business unit. This might be useful when you would want to charge for this particular EC2 instance. Which business unit should be charged for this specific thing? In an enterprise, you would want to be able to identify which business unit should be charged for this specific instance. Tags like this would really help with that. The next thing that you would want to configure is something called a security group. A security group is nothing but a firewall, a virtual firewall in front of your EC2 instance. You can decide what kind of traffic you would want to allow into the EC2 instance and what kind of traffic you would want to allow out of your EC2 instance. What we'll do in here is we'll create a new security group. I'll call this EC2 security group. And for now, what we'll do is we will only allow SSH. The default SSH thing which it shows, I think that's cool. So we would want to be able to SSH into this specific instance and we would want to be able to play with it. So we'll only allow SSH into this specific instance for now. So whatever defaults that you are seeing in here, SSH using TCP port 22, that looks cool. Now what we would do is we would click review and launch. Let's not really worry about the warning that is present in here. We'll talk about it a little later. For now, let's review whatever we have in here. Make sure that you are using a Linux 2 AMI and make sure that you are using T2 micro as the instance type and make sure that you are creating a new security group with the name as EC2-security group, and the security group allows SSH from everywhere. This configuration looks good. So let's go ahead and click launch. When you try and launch a EC2 instance, you need to associate it with a key pair. So you'd want to log into a EC2 instance. You need to provide user ID and password. In AWS, there are no user IDs and passwords. What we have are public key and a private key. And this is what is called a key pair. So we can say we would want to create a new key pair or we would want to use an existing key pair. Right now, we don't really have any key pairs which are present in here. So what we'll do is we'll say create a new pair. So we are asking AWS to create a new pair, new key pair for us. So I'll call this EC2 default. So EC2 default. So give the name as EC2-default. This is kind of a convention that we follow always. The name can be actually anything, but it's kind of a convention I follow to use EC2-default. Once you do this, what I would recommend you to do is to click download key pair. So make sure that you download the key pair and you would say allow over here. What would happen is the key pair would be downloaded to your hard disk. Make sure that you keep the key pair in a very, very secure place. Anybody who has access to that specific key would be able to log into your EC2 instance. So make sure that it's safeguarded and you are putting it in a very secure place. And over here, you can say launch instance. The launch of the EC2 instance would take a little while. What I would recommend you to do is to take a break and I'll see you in the next step. Welcome back. In the previous step, we started the hands-on for EC2 instances. We launched up an EC2 instance, and in this step, while we wait for the EC2 instance to launch up, let's quickly review the concept of an instance type. There are a wide variety of workloads for which you would want to use EC2 instances, and AWS has created a optimized combination of compute, memory, disk, and networking for specific workloads. We saw memory optimized instances, storage optimized instances, and a wide variety of other instances. These are all called instance types. And there are 40 plus instance types that are present in AWS. And in total, there are 270 different variations of compute, memory, disk, and networking. And one of the toughest jobs is to choose the right instance for your specific workload, for your specific application. One of the interesting things that you would see is the naming. So T2.micro is the type of instance that we created in the last step. T over here is the instance family. As we saw, it said T is a general purpose instance. 2 in here stands for generation. So earlier we had T1 instances, now we have T2 instances. So this is the second generation of T instance family. There are improvements with each of these generations. The next one is micro. Micro in here indicates the size. So how much CPU, how much memory, how much storage. There are different sizes which are possible: nano, micro, small, medium, large, and extra large. You'd see that as the size increases, so as I go from micro to small, small to medium, you'd see that the compute, memory, and the networking capabilities also increase proportionately. So if I go into the console and search for EC2, and I would go over to the instances. We have one running instance right now. Before we actually check that instance, what I'll try and do is click launch instance, and I'll choose the same AMI and go to next. Over here, you can see the different sizes which are present: nano, micro, small, medium, large. If I scroll a little further down, you can see that the amount of CPU increases with the size of the instance. The amount of memory also increases. The network performance also increases as the size of an instance increases. Now, let's get back to the hands-on exercise that we were doing earlier. What I'll do is I'll do a cancel over here, and we have a first EC2 instance up and running. So let's quickly take a look at that. So you can see that the name is first EC2 instance. Where is this name coming from? This name is coming from the tag which we gave it. We gave a tag of name with the first EC2 instance, and that's what is being displayed in here. You can see that there is a specific instance ID which is assigned to it. The instance type is T2 micro, and you can see that this specific instance is actually created in a specific availability zone. So we are creating it in a region of Mumbai, and in Mumbai, as we know earlier, as we discussed earlier, there are 3 availability zones. And this instance is created in AP South 1A availability zone. If I actually expand this by clicking this icon which is present in here, the icon over here, this would expand up, and I could see more details about this specific instance. So you can see that this specific instance has a public IP address assigned to it, and you can see that it also has a private IP address assigned to it. You can see the AMI details, and you can see tons of other details in here. Now let's click this to minimize that down. Now I want to start, stop, or perform actions with this specific instance. How can I do them? You can go to actions and go to instance state and say stop or reboot or terminate. Stop would stop the EC2 instance, reboot would restart it, and terminate would completely terminate the instance. You'll not be able to use that instance again. Now what we'll do is we'll try and connect to it and try and execute a few commands. So let's do a connect. So either you can do a actions connect or directly click connect, which is present in here. There are different options which are present in here. You can actually use a SSH client, or use something called a session manager, or use EC2 instance connect. The easiest among these is actually to use a EC2 instance connect. So we'll use EC2 instance connect. The default username in EC2 is EC2-user. So you can leave that as it is in here, and you can do a connect. Once you are able to successfully launch up the instance using instance connect, then you should see a screen like this. Over here, you can actually go in and actually type in who am I. I am EC2-user. You can type in Python-version. Actually, it should have been Python-version. And you'd see the Python version which is installed in here. If you're having any problems with Instance Connect, if the instance does not launch up, make sure that you're using Chrome browser. I had problems using Safari with Instance Connect, so make sure that you're using Chrome browser, and make sure that you're using, if you go into the instance details, go further down. If you look at the AMI ID which is present in here, it should be an Amazon 2. It should be a Linux to AMI, and if you actually hover over to the EC2 security groups and look at the inbound rules. So if I'm clicking the view inbound rules, you should be able to see a rule like this: 22 TCP allowed from everywhere. So what we are doing in here is we are allowing SSH into this instance, and that is exactly how the instance connect works. In this step, we were able to use EC2 instance connect into the Linux 2 EC2 instance that we have created and execute a couple of simple commands against it. In the next step, let's see how to launch up a web server from this EC2 instance. We would want to be able to connect to it, execute a few URLs against it. Let's see how to do that in the subsequent step. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. In the previous step, we were able to successfully connect to the EC2 instance, and we were able to execute a few commands against it using EC2 instance connect. In this step, let's set up a HTTP server, a web server, using the EC2 instance. One of the things I'll start doing is actually I'll copy this URL for instance connect, which is present in here. I'll close this instance connect and I'll launch up a new window and type that URL in and paste that URL in. Let's see what would happen. You would see that we would be able to connect to that instance connect from here as well. I like to have a complete window where instance connect is open instead of having a pop-up. So I can take the URL from the pop-up, put it in here, and you can see that I'm able to execute commands from here. So we can do a who am I or ls. You can see that there is no files which are present in here or a present working directory to see where I am. I'm in the home folder right now. Now, I would want to install a HTTP server in here, Apache HTTP server in here. And to be able to do that, the first thing I would need to do is to become a super user. So what I'll do is I'll do a sudo su to become a super user, to become a root user. And what I'll start with doing is do a yum update. So yum update would install all the software updates that are needed for this specific EC2 instance. So let's go ahead and say yum update. We don't really need to do a sudo yum update. Yum update should be fine because we are already root. You can see that it's asking us, is this okay? Yes or no. So it's actually downloading something and it's asking us if it's okay to download. I'm saying yes. It would go ahead and execute the download. One of the things is when we execute this command from a script, we don't really want this question to be asked. And that's the reason why later when we execute this command as part of a startup script or something of that kind, what we'll do is we will add a -y. It took about a minute for the update to complete, and the update is now complete. As we discussed earlier, I don't really want a question to be asked for me when a yum update is being done, I would need to add in yum update -y. Right now there is nothing to be updated, so anyway it's not going to ask us anything. Now all the software which is already present in here is up to date. All the security patches are also installed. So let's go ahead and install our HTTPD server. If I would want to install any software on EC2, you can use the yum install command and say HTTPD. So I would want to install Apache HTTPD server. So it's you can see that again it's asking me a question. So it's saying I would want to download something. Is this okay? I would say yes. The way we could have avoided asking question is again by adding a -y as a option to that specific command. Right now it's already installed, so there is nothing to do. Now we have installed the Apache server in here. Now we would want to start it up. How do we start it up? The first command is to do a systemctl start HTTPD. So this would start up a Apache HTTP server. The other thing that you need to do is do a systemctl enable HTTPD. This would ensure that when you restart the server, the HTTPD server also would be restarted. So the two commands which we executed are systemctl start HTTPD and systemctl enable HTTPD. What do these enable? This would enable us to talk to the Apache HTTP server. How can we talk to the HTTP server? That's where the public IP addresses would come into picture. So I'm right now selecting the EC2 instance, and I'm actually now copying the public IP of the EC2 instance, and I'm trying to fire a request to it. Let's see what would happen. Not allowed. So it's a public IP, and still I'm not able to launch it up. Why is it not being allowed? The reason why it's not being allowed is something called a security group. A security group is like a firewall. A security group is like a firewall in front of your EC2 instance. It does not allow any traffic that you have not configured into the EC2 instance. How can I configure the security group? Let's go ahead and see that. So I'll go over to the EC2 instance, and over here what I'll do is I'll select the security group. So EC2-security group. Let's check the inbound rules. The inbound rules only allow, it does not allow HTTP connection. HTTP requests are sent on port 80, and that's the reason why we are not able to access the instance. So let's go ahead and say view inbound rules. Actually, I have to click the security group. And what we want to do is we would want to edit this security group. So it's the security group name, as you can see in here, is EC2 security group. Let's select that, and let's go further down, and let's say edit inbound rules. And over here, I would want to add a rule. I would want to allow HTTP traffic. So I would want to allow HTTP requests. So port 80, I would want to allow it from anywhere. For now, let's allow it from anywhere, and let's go ahead and do save rules. And now let's go ahead and run this, and now you'd see that there is a test page coming up. You can see that now we are able to access the HTTP server which was installed on our EC2 instance. In this step, we were able to successfully install Apache HTTP server on our EC2 instance. All that we needed to do was to execute yum update to install all the security patches for existing software on the EC2 instance, and after that we were able to execute yum install httpd to install the Apache HTTP server, and we were able to use systemctl start httpd command and systemctl enable httpd commands to start the HTTP server up. After that, we saw that we needed to configure a security group entry to allow port 80, and then we were able to access the HTTP server. I'm sure you're having a lot of fun. Welcome back. Before we move into the next section, let's quickly review some of the things which you learned in this specific section. Let's start with the AMI, Amazon Machine Image. Amazon Machine Image contains what operating system and what software you'd want on the instance. You can also pre-configure the security settings that your EC2 instances should adhere to. The AMI helps you to reduce boot time and improve security by creating customized hardened AMIs. So if you need any specific software, or if you need any specific security settings, you can actually pre-bake them into the AMI, and you can create an AMI and you can launch all your new instances from that specific AMI. This is also called hardening of your EC2 images. AMIs are region specific. You cannot use a AMI from one region to create a EC2 instance in another region. You have to copy your AMI to the other region. Make sure that you back up your AMIs in multiple regions. This would be really useful in disaster recovery situations. The other thing you can do with your AMIs is to share them with other AWS accounts. Now let's move on to EC2 instance types. EC2 instance types are nothing but an optimized combination of compute, memory, disk, and networking. So different workloads need different kinds of systems. So you have compute optimized instances, memory optimized instances, storage optimized instances, networking optimized instances, GPU optimized instances, and a variety of other instance types. Now, the next thing that we would want to talk about is security groups. Security group is nothing but a virtual firewall to control incoming and outgoing traffic from or to your AWS resources. In this section, we were focused on the traffic which comes into EC2 instances. Security groups are default deny. You can create separate allow rules for inbound and outbound traffic. Security groups are stateful, which means that once you allow inbound traffic, the outbound traffic for that specific request is automatically allowed. You can assign multiple security groups to your EC2 instances, and also any changes on the security groups are immediately effective. The next thing we would want to talk about are the key pairs. Key pairs or the public key cryptography is what is used to protect your EC2 instances. You need to have a private key with the right permissions. We did change mod 400 on the key so that we can actually SSH into the EC2 instance. And for Windows EC2 instances only, in addition to the private key, you would need a admin password also. And for you to be able to SSH into a EC2 instance, the security group should allow inbound traffic into port 22. If you are trying to do a RDP into a Windows instance, the port which should be opened should be 3389. Now, a few other important things that we talked about were instance metadata service. Instance metadata service helps you to get details about an EC2 instance from inside an EC2 instance. User data is used for bootstrapping. So if you want to install any OS patches or software when an EC2 instance is being launched up, you can use user data. The public IP address of an EC2 instance would change if you stop and start it again. That's the reason why you would go for elastic IP addresses. Elastic IP addresses give a static public IP address for your EC2 instance. This will not change as long as the elastic IP is assigned to that EC2 instance. You are built for elastic IP addresses when you are not using them. So when a EC2 instance attached with it is stopped, or when it is not associated with any EC2 instance, that's when you are built for an elastic IP address. So if you are having an elastic IP address, make sure that you are using it or make sure that you release it. The last thing that we would want to talk about is the launch templates. A launch template is nothing but a pre-configured template. It contains the AMI ID, the instance type, the network settings for your EC2 instances. So this would simplify the creation of your EC2 instances. I'm sure you had a wonderful time in this specific section, and I'm all excited to meet you in the next section. I'll see you there.